The show begins in Spain with our main character, Max, who describes how he first met his love, and, when they were young, Max reveals how Anne was always there for him during his first experiences as the two used to spend all of their time together. They found the courage to tell their families about the relationship when they were teenagers. Everything was going great until Max and Anne were involved in a terrible accident while driving while intoxicated one day. Max ended up in jail for involuntary manslaughter at the age of 19, while Anne died. Max was immediately targeted by the other prisoners, who started torturing him because he was the son of a billionaire. Initially, he used the funds his grandmother had concealed in the books she had given him through official bribery to pay them. However, the money soon ceased to shield him, and Max was still beaten and mistreated. He was even thrown into an industrial washing machine by the prisoners one day and left there for an hour. Max believed he would die when he eventually managed to escape, but he didn't. He realized his life could not get any worse at that precise moment. He made a joke about his own situation after getting up, causing the inmates to applaud him. Max started concentrating on his strength after that incident, and he eventually developed into the prison's toughest fighter, winning everyone's respect. Max is finally happy in prison in the present day, but he is informed that he will be released for good behavior one day. He is picked up by his father, Rafa, after being released. However, Max is deeply resentful of him and is unhappy to see him. Max declines to accompany him. In light of this, Rafa explains that he was the one who requested his release and reveals that World War II is about to start. Rafa tells Max that his mother and grandmother have already arrived at the hidden luxury bunker he has secured for his family. The boy declines to accompany him in spite of this. Max eventually changes his mind, though, when Rafa tells him that Anne's family will also be present. Ultimately, he has developed an addiction to being stuck with people who despise him. Max and Rafa notice panicked people rushing through the streets carrying suitcases as they make their way to the bunker. Rafa then tells his son about the bunker, which took 7 years to complete and is situated at the bottom of a lake. The father and son then take a helicopter to their destination, where they descend a 275-meter elevator. Even though they are already 90% of the way there, the guards at the entrance confiscate their phones and personal items to prevent anyone from tracking them. The two are astounded by the bunker's size and luxury when they eventually get inside. With adult recreation areas and children's playrooms, it is 20,000 square meters in size. In order to protect them from radiation, they are also given turquoise leather suits. Staff members wear orange ones. In addition to wearing a bracelet that checks their health indicators, the suits have the ability to monitor radiation levels and air quality. Every room has an AI assistant called Roxanne, who can alter the window views and offer assistance. When Max and his grandmother Victoria, who is suffering from cancer, finally meet, he is overjoyed. Being reunited after such a long time makes the family very happy. Before long, Anne's family in the distance catches Max's eye. This includes Gummo, Anne's father, Asia, his daughter, and Mimi, his new wife. As they continue to hold Max responsible for Anne's demise, Asia and GMO appear unhappy to see him. When Max tries to make amends, they only insult him and won't forgive him. It turns out that Asia blames Max not just for her sister's passing but also for the death of her mother, who passed away soon after and due to her inability to deal with the loss. However, when the two families are seated at the same table, Asia asks Max directly how he felt about leaving and to die and fleeing the scene of the accident. The question makes Max uncomfortable, but before Asia can respond, the others ask her to calm down. Minerva, the bunker's creator, arrives during dinner and welcomes all the guests while giving them an update on the situation in the outside world. She reveals that the situation has gotten worse in other nations as well as NATO bombing Russia in retaliation for the invasion of Norway. She makes it clear that she is in charge of this place, so everyone must abide by the rules, and she asks for everyone's complete cooperation. GMO appears to be very angry upon returning to his room due to Max's presence and is unable to calm down. Mimi tries to comfort him, but the man reveals suddenly that he doesn't love or care about her. He acknowledges that he cheated on his wife while they were in love, but it was only for amusement. His grief over the deaths of his wife and daughter was the only reason he married Mimi. Mimi begins to cry because this deeply hurts her feelings, but GMO doesn't seem to care. Asia responds angrily and insultingly when Max tries to talk to her elsewhere. Then, before leaving, he gives her Anne's phone that he had taken from the scene of the accident. He asks Asia to stop harboring such animosity toward him and claims that he loves and more than anything in this world. Asia then rushes to her room, where she begins to watch touching videos of her sister and Max, which makes her smile. Before he killed her, look at how adorable he was. In another scene, we see Rafa and Germo having a drink at the bar, where Rafa begs him to make an effort to forgive his son for what transpired. The bunker is suddenly shaken by a tremendous rumble. The walls start to shake and the lights go out. everyone becomes terrified. People are therefore requested to go to the bunker's safe place, which is the dome. In the midst of the mayhem, a terrified Asia frantically looks for her father. When she witnesses Rafa and Max helping him, they then all get on an elevator, but it suddenly breaks down as they are traveling, leaving them terrified. Luckily, the emergency brakes kick in, enabling them all to safely arrive at the dome. When they arrive, they notice multiple screens in front of them that are displaying different news reports about the apocalypse that is taking place all over the world. People are dying in large numbers, cities are collapsing, and fires rage through the streets. Minerva tells them that a nuclear bomb went off only a few miles away from the bunker, but she reassures them that they are safe there. A massive explosion, however, causes the lights to go out and the TVs to lose their signal, which significantly worsens the situation. Rafa shockingly confesses to his and GMO's family in the dark that he was the one who gave the order for Max to escape the night of the accident. Rafa urged his son to flee because it turns out that Max was very intoxicated and high. Rafa suddenly changed his mind, and Max was almost acquitted of the accident during the trial. Max was furious with his father because he wanted to do the right thing, so he eventually testified against him and had him put in jail. Hearing this, Victoria gets furious and begins berating Rafa for sending her grandson to jail. She also chastises her daughter Frida for getting married to a man who is so weak. However, Frida confronts her mother about her controlling actions, which ultimately led her to turn to Rafa for love. Despite her toxic mother, who never gave her the love she needed, she shockingly reveals that she never loved Rafa and only married him. Rafa is crushed to realize that his wife has never loved him, and this has a profound impact on Victoria. It's as if wealth turns everyone into a sociopath. When Minerva says that two of her employees are getting ready to go to the surface with cameras to fix the antennas, their conversation is interrupted. The two guests in protective suits then proceed to the surface, where they are stunned to see corpses and flaming streets. The bunker then watches a live broadcast of this event. Unexpectedly, one of them's gloves adheres to a railing, and the other struggles mightily to free it. However, in the process, the glove rips, exposing the man to radiation and causing him to scream in agony. At that moment, all of the guests start to worry about the safety of those who went outside, and the camera also shuts off. Minerva, however, maintains her composure, tells the guests that she will keep them informed of developments, and leaves the dome. She quickly arrives in the control room, where she enthusiastically congratulates her employees for convincing the billionaires that their simulation was real. In a startling turn of events, we discover that there is no apocalypse and that Minerva and her team staged a scam to make the billionaires think a nuclear war had broken out. On the outside, however, everything is as it should be. We discovered through a flashback that Minerva and her team had been planning this scam for quite some time, but they had been waiting for the right geopolitical situation to present it. They got in touch with their clients as soon as tensions around the world increased and staged the ideal scenario, which involved people running through the streets with suitcases. But why suitcases? I don't understand that. Even the so-called tectonic shift that shook the bunker was staged, and all the news reports about the World War were painstakingly made up. It turns out that the masterminds behind it were Minerva and her brother Zero. To stage the apocalypse, they even hired a film director, maybe Kubri's son. The smoke, the dust from the shifting ground, the stone block that smashed through the walls, and even the elevator incident were all intended to psychologically manipulate the guests so they wouldn't question reality. The guests inside the dome are growing more and more concerned about what is going on. In order to comfort his mother and grandmother, Max does this. He claims that since humanity recovered from the events in Hiroshima and Chernobyl, they too can endure. The words Max says make Asia smile as she overhears this conversation. After that, Asia goes to the restroom to watch videos of Max on Anne's phone when she suddenly hears sounds coming from the stall next door. A woman has hanged herself and is close to dying, much to her surprise. Asia calls for assistance right away. Since Asia is a medical student and has some experience, she then makes a valiant attempt to save the woman. Dr. Julia from the bunker soon arrives, and they work together to revive the woman. The woman expresses her disappointment at Asia for saving her, but she doesn't seem appreciative. Minerva arrives at the dome and tells everyone that everything is safe now, so they can return to their rooms. Later, when Minerva is approached by a concerned Julia, the two are revealed to be dating. Julia worries about the guests' mental health, but Minerva seems unconcerned and says they will adapt because people can adapt to anything. After that, she and her team start applying special makeup to the man who went outside to give the impression that radiation burned his body. After that, the scene cuts to Rafa and Frida, who who want to talk about what she said. Rafa is crushed by her words, but Frida apologizes and then demands a divorce from her husband because she doesn't love him in the first place. She also reveals that she is in love with another man, who happens to be her yoga instructor. Rafa finds it difficult to accept this and is devastated. Frida, however, makes it clear that she has already made up her mind and goes to practice her downward dog and sleep in a different room. Later, a distressed Rafa approaches the dining hall to request some food, but the staff declines because they strictly ration everything and are unable to provide more. Rafa begins consuming the food forcibly because he refuses to accept this. Minerva sends Yako, a guard, to deal with him. Rafa is shocked with a taser by the guard after Yako begs him to put the food back. This is noticed by Max, who immediately rushes to protect his father and ends up fighting Yako. The guard is easily defeated by Max, who also takes his taser, but soon after, several more appear. Minerva communicates with Yako and orders him to release Max. Max is ready to fight them all. Gummo and Mimi, who have long since reconciled, are seen in other scenes. Gummo reminds her of how deeply they loved one another during their covert affair, which ended after they were married, but she says they can still have that and advises getting a divorce and having a covert affair. This turns GMO on, and the two end up making love. While watching her sister's phone once more, Asia discovers a spicy video that Max sent to Anne. She eventually turns off the video because this makes her feel uncomfortable and disturbed. A guard later asks Mimi her blood type, which turns out to be AB negative. Then she, Victoria, and several other women are taken away by the guards. The women are informed that the man exposed to radiation has gotten worse and needs a blood transfusion immediately. Mimi agrees to donate blood and notices Julia performing the fictitious surgery on the man while doing so. Mimi is shaken and nearly has a panic attack when she sees the man in such a terrible condition. Mimi and the other women inform the guests of the man's terrible condition, who appears to have burned skin and is barely hanging on to life after leaving the infirmary. The scammers intended to instill fear in the people, and this only serves to frighten the guests more. But Julia suffers greatly from the staged performance, and she does start having panic attacks. Julia maintains that she didn't become a doctor to trick people in this way, despite Minerva's hasty approach and attempt to seduce her with a kiss. She regrets joining this project and is upset by people's suffering. She promises not to reveal the plan to anyone and wants to leave. However, Minerva is aware that if the authorities question her, she will readily give in. Zero, Minerva's brother, is furious as he watches everything from the control room. Julia threatens to reveal everything to the guests when Minerva won't let her leave, which sparks a heated argument. Zero, who shows up with some pills to calm Julia's anxiety, interrupted their argument. However, she angrily tosses the medication aside, claiming that she is his doctor and not the other way around. In a startling turn of events, Minerva screams in terror as Zero suddenly throws Julia off the railing and kills her instantly. The scene then takes us back to the past, where Minerva can be seen telling her team about Gummo, who was born into a wealthy family. He inherited and grew a business empire at the age of 20, rising to the position of director of 64 companies and becoming a significant figure. It turns out that he wouldn't even notice if he lost 1% of his fortune. That same 1%, however, would fill 4 big trucks if it were turned into cash. And Minerva explains to her team how she despises the wealthy. As a result, she decided to join capitalism and made plans to rob billionaires when she realized she couldn't fight it alone. Minerva is approached by her employees, who have just found Julia's body and are horrified. In the present, they ask a lot of questions. According to the CCTV footage, Zero explains, the woman had a panic attack before jumping off the railing to end her life. The other members, however, don't trust him and demand to see the tape. After that, Zero shows them the CCTV footage of Julia leaping off the railing by herself. The team members decide to accept the video as the truth despite the fact that it is clear that it is fake. Later, as the guests are eating, Minerva shows up and declares the deaths of the man who was exposed to radiation and their doctor, Julia, who was said to have killed herself. She adds that since the situation has gotten worse, they will have to strictly adhere to the rules and ration going forward. After reprimanding Rafa for stealing food the night before, Minerva gives Max 10 minutes to return the taser gun. Unaware that Minerva's team is watching them through CCTV cameras, GMO and Mimi are later seen having sex in his room. As it turns out, Minerva has been monitoring people all the time, and the video is being used to gather information for their artificial intelligence. Roxanne H. He performs the downward dog in this manner. In a flashback, we see Minerva's team questioning her about how all these billionaires would vanish overnight given that their loved ones would undoubtedly report them missing. She then reveals that they will leave fictitious video messages for their loved ones while on vacation, explaining that they are just taking a break. It turns out that Roxanne, the AI Zero had been developing for 11 years, is so sophisticated that it can mimic and even learn a person's mannerisms. Therefore, even if someone calls the guests on their phones, Roxanne will pretend to be that person and answer. In the present, GMO gets multiple calls and texts from his business partner, Oswaldo, who claims the situation is urgent. The billionaire then ends the message by saying that he is too busy on vacation in the Philippines to respond. Roxanne then ends the message. In another scene, Frida is talking to her mother, Victoria, who reveals that she has feelings for Mimi and wants to go after her. Mimi is a straight married woman who is much younger than Frida, which disgusts her. Victoria responds that she just wants to have fun when she asks her mother to concentrate on her cancer rather than attacking a young woman. This is not how my old friend Epstein would have judged me. Max is seen playing basketball by himself in the meantime. Minerva is incensed that he has yet to return the taser gun as she watches him through the cameras, so she sends Jaco to get it. She takes her brother aside to talk because she is also plagued by memories of Julia all the time. Zero expresses regret for his actions, claiming that pushing Julia was an accident and that he didn't mean to. He reassures her that his mental health is stable and that he is currently taking his medication. She declines when Zero asks if she wants him taken off the projects. Then, while Max is playing basketball, Jaco approaches him and demands that he give up the taser gun. Max declines and challenges him to a fight instead. Minerva, who has been hearing the conversation, tells Jaco not to proceed, but the furious guard won't listen and starts a physical fight with Max. They both inflict serious injuries on one another, but in the end, Max prevails and punches Jaco to death, causing his earpiece to fall out. Asia arrives at this precise moment and is stunned to see a bloodied Max standing over Jaco's corpse. A short while later, a number of staff members show up and hurry Jaco to the infirmary while Asia asks Max what transpired. Max is horrified by what he did and worries that he might have killed the man. After examining the cut on his head, Asia determines that he requires stitches. She proceeds to set his shoulder back into place after discovering that it has been dislocated. In another scene, Minerva and her team begin to panic as Jaco's condition rapidly gets worse and they don't know how to respond because Julia, the only doctor, is no longer with them. Someone recommends calling a doctor or even taking him to the hospital. With no other choice left, Minerva is unwilling to take that risk. Because Asia is somewhat knowledgeable about medicine, she turns to her for assistance. Asia agrees to take over even though she hasn't finished medical school. Asia examines Jaco and notices that his pulse is weakening and his breathing is difficult, which results in dangerously low oxygen levels in his blood. She gives someone an injection. Jaco soon comes back to life, causing everyone to exhale a sigh of relief. Asaldo ends a video message to Gummo's phone, pleading with him to pick up the phone because he has the most important news of his life to share. As they realize Oswaldo is adamant and won't stop calling, this puts the scammers in a challenging situation. The scene then cuts to a group therapy session with the guests, where Rafa expresses his resentment toward his wife leaving. He claims that he only talks to Roxanne, who is his only friend, at the end of the day. Germo assures him that he is not alone and has him as a friend after hearing this. He also tells everyone present that he admires Rafa because it was Germo who asked Rafa to testify against his own son just as Max was about to be acquitted of his crimes. Gummo will always be appreciative of Rafa for listening to his friend and sending his son to prison. Gummo encourages his friend to end his relationship with Frida and even agrees to set him up with another woman when the two men visit a spa later. The two decide to meet up later for drinks after they befriend one of the female employees. In another scene, Frida notices that Victoria is trying to get closer to Mimi, which disturbs her. Victoria begins criticizing Germo, claiming that he caused her a great deal of suffering and cheated on his previous wife several times. She then commends Mimi for allegedly transforming GMO into a devoted and trustworthy man, which is obviously untrue. A civilian who is currently on a plane and searching for a landing spot signals one of the guests. The group makes an attempt to communicate, but their connection is too bad, and soon they hear what sounds like the plane crashing. It leaves them in a panic, but they don't realize it's just another well-thought-out move by Minerva's team to increase their anxiety. In another scene, Asia is seen tending to Max's injuries while he gives her a loving glance. As it becomes clear that she has begun to feel something for him, this makes it challenging for Asia to focus. Max is left in a state of confusion as she flees in panic because she feels overpowered. Oswaldo ends a message on Gummo's phone stating that he is traveling to the Philippines to meet his son. Minerva and her team experience panic as a result. Oswaldo will immediately realize that Guillermo never actually visited the Philippines if he contacts the Philippine embassy. Additionally, he will discover that Guillermo never left Spain if he gets in touch with the Spanish embassy. Even though it isn't yet complete, they decide to communicate with Oswaldo using the AI replica of Gummo because they have no other option. Then, Minerva and Zero decide to take the risk and video call Oswaldo using Guillermo, the AI version. Oswaldo reveals that they have received an offer to purchase a company that Guillermo has been interested in purchasing for the past 20 years. The AI GMO expresses excitement, and Oswaldo asks him to come for just one day to deal with the owner, who only wants to deal directly with Gummo. In order to halt the call and learn more about the purported company, Zero Man Ages creates false network issues. Later, the AI Gummo explains that he and Mimi have been having marital issues, so he prefers to enjoy their vacation rather than return. Oswaldo asks Guillermo for just one day so he can sign the paperwork and says he will personally meet the owner because he understands the situation. The AI GMO gets emotional upon hearing this and declares that he does not intend to buy the company but rather sell it and give all the proceeds to children in developing nation. Oswaldo is concerned about this and declares that he will deal with it on his own and that GMOs are not necessary. The company owner, however, adds that unless BJ3 is involved, the deal won't move forward. Regretfully, Roxanne is unaware of what BJ3 is. The man has never brought it up during his stay in the bunker, even though he has been watching Guillermo all the time. The AI GMO is unable to provide an answer. Thus, the team ends the call and quickly fabricates technical problems. But before Oswaldo calls again, they realize they can't leave it this way and need to learn about BJ3. While tending to his wounds, Max asks Asia why she left so suddenly. Surprisingly, she begins calling him a monster and claiming that she can't bear to see him because he destroyed her family. However, it is clear that this is all a front for her inner turmoil and desire to kiss him. As the episode draws to a close, Asia leaves in tears while Max is deeply offended by her words. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, leave a comment about your favorite movie and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.